Hello, 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 and welcome back to DLA Alternative. It's your boy Brandon, and I hope everyone is doing phenomenal. So what I want to do in this video is I want to break down the Season 5 episode titles, and I want to break them down the DLA way, and I want to do it thoroughly. And there's an easy way to do that since this is our final season and this is the first time we're actually able to do this. How are we going to do this? We're going to compare all of the chapters in order together. What I mean by that, you have to take all of your chapter 1s, all of your chapter 2s, and so on, and then you have to compare what happens in those chapters, not based off the title whatsoever, because these titles are extremely vague. In the past, we've never been able to figure out exactly what they mean unless they have a name in it. And even say, for example, Mad Max, we didn't know who Mad Max was, and that's not really what that episode is exactly about. That's just a name of a new character, but that has nothing to do with what that episode was actually about. So let's keep moving forward, and it all makes sense as we go along. So how we're going to do this is we're going to take all of our chapter 1s and what happens, what's the major point that happens in every season in chapter 1. We're introduced to the problem that needs to be solved, always. Like, for example, we got the vanishing of Will Byers, and then we got Mad Max. Well, that doesn't make any sense, right? Well, when they see Mad Max's name on the arcade machine for the first time, that's when Will sees the Mind Flayer, which is the problem that needs to be solved through the entire season. Same thing with season 3. Susie, do you copy? Doesn't make any sense, right? Except at the end of that episode is when Billy gets taken, and then that's the solution that we need to solve the entire season. It's the same thing with season 4. We're introduced to the Hellfire Club. Doesn't make any sense? Well, we're introduced to Eddie, who the group in Hawkins is trying to help and solve his problem the entire season. They're trying to make sure that he's okay and that nobody gets to him and that he survives. Well, sadly, that did not happen. But who knows? Maybe that's going to have some connection going into season 5. I'm really hoping so because I love Eddie and I know all of you do too. So if chapter 1 is going to be our intro to the major problem that needs to be solved through the entirety of the season, then season 5, chapter 1, The Crawl, that means The Crawl has to do with our major problem that needs to be solved through the entirety of season 5. And we don't know what that means. However, the term crawl could mean many, many different things. And a lot of people are thinking that it's about all the stuff that could be crawling out of the crack that happened at the end of season 4. Well, we know there's going to be a time jump. So if that's the case, that would be extremely short and vague because we're going to have to do that time jump. That would be in the past. We would only see maybe a little bit of that. Or maybe we'll see how that actually happened in the Upside Down and happened in Hawkins. Who knows? But the first thing I thought about when I saw The Crawl was the song from Linkin Park called Crawling. And he talks about in that song about something crawling under his skin, eating him alive, and changing his whole mindset about everything. And it's making him go crazy. That's what I thought The Crawl was compared to. And that would make sense of a problem that would need to be solved all through season 5, right? If something is overtaking one of our characters and crawling in their skin, overtaking them, that's the problem that would need to be solved. And I think that's probably what that's going to be about. So let's jump right into chapter 2. Chapter 2, the comparison from every season, is always when we start to get the beginning of the info about that problem. So if that's going to compare it to season 5, then that would mean that that chapter being the vanishing of blank would be the beginning of the info about the problem. I have a strong theory in my mind that this episode is going to be The Vanishing of Will Byers Part 2. I really, really, truly think so. I really don't see how The Vanishing of Holly Wheeler makes any sense to this story whatsoever. That adds a whole entire new vibe and new storyline and somebody that needs to be saved. We've already had multiple people that have needed to be saved. We don't need another, in my opinion. So I really don't see how that makes sense. I think Holly is going to have an involvement on how this problem is going to be solved. And I think she's been a part of this the entire show, and we just don't know that yet. But she's been extremely observant in the background, and she's been listening. So that's the thing you got to pay attention to with Holly, is that if she's going to have involvement with season 5, I really don't think she's going to vanish, but she might be the one who helps who vanishes. And I really think we're going to see the backside of when Will vanished from season 1. We don't know a lot about it, and I really think that we're going to get some answers going into 5. So all of the chapter 3s usually is when we get an answer about this problem, the very, very vague beginning of our answers, okay? And that, say, for example, season 1 was when we start seeing the lights. And we know that the lights are a way to connect in that season. So in this season, if chapter 3, the turnbow trap, is going to be a possible beginning answer to this problem, who knows what that could mean? The turnbow, a lot of people are comparing to a trailer, which is possible, but that's not really that strong of a comparison with the name turnbow. Turnbow is a very famous name in Europe, and it's an old name. And we know that from the very end of season 4 that that's the name of a family who owns a real estate development. Think about it. If they own real estate, the trailer park is also a real estate development. So Turnbow could also be that trailer and a real estate development. So maybe that trailer park is going to have some sort of trap to trap somebody in our group or to trap our monster that's going on in season 5. The thing I'm worried about that is that's where Eddie passed away, in the Upside Down. So I don't like that. I don't like the comparison that it's a trailer possibly and that it's a trap. There's also something called an upside down rainbow, and I'm not going to get involved with that. But let me know if you had an idea that maybe that's what it could be. When we get to chapter 4 in all of our seasons, it's always when a test is being put on, whether it's to one of our characters being tested or something's being found that needs to be tested, as in the body in season 1. All of the other seasons, usually one of our characters are being tested. Season 1's a little different from all of the rest of the show. And I have a feeling that season 5 is going to be strongly connected to season 1. And I feel like 2 through 4 were all just filler from what happened in season 1 all the way to season 5. And that season is going to compare back to season 1 and why all of that happened and why all of this had to happen. So let's keep going. If that's going to be our test episode, that's Chapter 4, Sorcerer in season 5. And a lot of people think Will is compared to this. I really do too. And if that's the case, then that means Will is going to be tested in this episode, and it would make perfect sense for season 5. They've already said that Will is going to have a strong and major role throughout this entire season. So this would make perfect sense that Will be tested in this episode. Chapter 5 is usually where we get our answer on how to solve this major problem, except our group doesn't know exactly what that means yet. And that's what leads on for the rest of the season most of the time. For example, season 1, The Flea and the Acrobat, one of my favorites. Mr. Clark straight up tells us how to get into the Upside Down based off a theoretical description and lesson from school, okay? Based off The Flea and the Acrobat. Well, that's actually the exact answer of what's going on and how to get into the Upside Down. So if season 5 gives us an answer on how to solve this problem, okay, it's called Shock Jock. And everybody is comparing this to the radio station behind the scenes footage that we have, and because it's a term used in radio. And a shock jock is someone who discloses offensive and derogatory information that people don't agree with over the radio. My comparison is, if that has to do with this radio, I really think this behind the scenes photo with Robin in this mysterious shirt, I really think this is Eddie, and I really think Robin is going to be a strong believer and defender of this Hellfire Club and of Eddie and of those people. And I think they all will, because you got to remember, the Hellfire Club is still at large and people still don't like them, and they think that they're the cause of this major problem. So our boys from the group that are involved with Hellfire are basically targets, and they should be targets at the beginning of this season, logically. So who knows? But the thing about Shock Jock that I'm worried about, the name separate. Shock, okay, has to do with electricity, and we see Mama get shocked at some point, and we know electricity has a strong major involvement in this show. And if that's going to be an answer to a solution, maybe electricity is going to have an answer to the solution on how to solve everything, okay? Who knows? But the term jock is what makes me extremely nervous. Jock is also an athlete, and we have two athletes in our group, one of them being Steve and one of them being Lucas. I don't want anything to happen to either of them, but the term together, shock jock, sounds like a shocked athlete or an electrocuted athlete to me, and that makes me extremely nervous. So I'm really hoping all this is just an answer and not both of those things, where we get an answer and also a problem. So when we get to chapter 6, that's where it's going to get confusing, because some of our seasons have 9 chapters. Well, those ones, you have to take 6 and 7 and put them together like it's all chapter 6. Okay? So keep that in mind. If we do that and we take all of our chapter 6s and some 7s, that's usually when we get our discovery about the major problem and the cause of everything. And that's where it gets interesting. And I'm going to jump into season 2, because in season 2, that's when we have chapter 6, the spy, and chapter 7, the lost sister. And I truly think Kali is going to be coming back in some sort of way. We know Kali can make you see anything. So that doesn't mean we're going to see Kali the way we saw Kali back in season 2. We could see Kali in any way that she wants us to see her. Remember that. So she is a very important character, and that episode was extremely important. No one's going to tell me that it's not. Makes no sense that they would put it in there if it's not important to this show. No episode or chapter has been not important to this show in some sort of way. Keep that in mind about that episode always. It's not irrelevant in my mind. I feel like that's probably one of the most important episodes of this entire show, but people will disagree, and that's okay. But think about that. Just with that comparison, that all of our chapter 6 and sometimes 7 is usually when we have the discovery of our problem. And if that's true going into season 5, then that would mean escape from camazotz, which makes perfect sense, is when we are going to discover the major problem of not just season 5, but most likely the entire show as a whole, which I'm extremely excited for that episode just based off the title, because it sounds crazy. And I'm not going to compare any D&D lore into that title episode whatsoever. We're strictly keeping this based off of comparing it all to the other seasons. So if that's when our discovery happens, it kind of sounds like it would make sense with how strong of a title episode that is. So now that we get to our chapter 7, that's usually when we get our answer and our group has figured out how to solve this major problem. And it's not when the resolution happens. That comes in chapter 8 always. But in chapter 7 is right when they get that answer and they're about to start that process on how to resolve it. So if we're going to compare that to season 5, that episode is the bridge. So what does that mean? The bridge could mean many, many different things. And I'm going to put this on you real quick. The bridge could be a connection between two different things, two different sides, right? So that could possibly mean what's going to happen in season 5. We have to connect to the other side, to the upside down, but they already do that, so it doesn't really make sense. So what else can a bridge be? A bridge could be something that goes over something, you know? So maybe they're going to be in the upside down and they need to create a bridge where people can go over and not get put back into the upside down. Makes sense a little bit, but this is where I think we're going. We have escape from camazotz right before, right? So that's our discovery. Well, the bridge is also a part of a ship where the captain commands its orders. So if the bridge is going to be a place where the orders are being commanded, that makes a little more sense than something that we're just going to have to cross over. So I really think that we're going to see where these commands are being ordered from for the first time. Who's doing it? Who knows? It could mean many different things. But the weird thing about a bridge is also we have the symbol of a rainbow, okay? Has anybody ever watched Thor, okay? And the bridge in Thor, it's a rainbow bridge, and that's Norse mythology, and the rainbow bridge is the connection between worlds, and it allows gods to enter worlds. So if it's something like that, then I guess we're getting extremely serious in this episode, and I'm sure we're going to, because it's almost the finale of the entire season at this point. So I'm sure it's going to be popping off and getting fucking crazy. So let's keep going. Chapter 8. Chapter 8 is usually our resolution to everything, except the difference in this one is it's called the right side up. And the difference between that from season 1 is that was the upside down. So if the resolution in season 1 was the upside down, that doesn't really make sense as a resolution, right? Because the upside down is what's causing all of these problems. That was a major cause of all of season 1, was this place called the upside down. So that's not a resolution in my mind. That's the opposite of a resolution. It's the upside down of the right side up, which would be the resolution. And that would make sense because it's the finale of our season. So the resolution should be there unless they really do want to continue this show and they're just lying to us that this is the last season, which I doubt. But this is where we're going to get our resolution to the entire show, which we should. And that would make sense that it's the exact opposite and upside down version of the upside down. The exact opposite end of the entire show. It makes perfect sense. So I think we're just going to have our resolution, and I think that's all that really means. But it's a little odd that it's the exact opposite, and it's a little odd that the resolution from season 1 technically was the upside down, and that doesn't make any sense at all to me, which makes me think that season 1 and season 5 are going to be super, super strongly connected. And I really think that season 5 would have never been a thing unless season 1 happened. And I only mean that in the term that season 1 needed to happen in order for season 5 to be a thing. That's very vague, and I'm going to leave you with that because all of these episode titles were extremely vague too. It's your boy Brandon, DLA Alternative. I hope you like this one. It's just a little breakdown of all these episode titles and my guess of what they could mean. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments and keep liking all these videos. Much love to everybody who keeps subscribing. Always keep following the journey. It's your boy Brandon, DLA Alternative. And as always, we out!